Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Moss here, tradingadventures.com, coming at you with some real talk and a bit of an update about the markets here. It's been a little quiet here lately. That I'm very aware of that. It's on my mind a lot, and I'm sure you guys are looking for some updates and some news as well. So before we get to the charts and look at the market, just let me explain what's going on here. This market has been choppy, and frankly, it's not been a great week for me. It's not bad. It's no real damage done, but it's just been a choppy back and forth kind of market for me. At least that's how I've been my experience of the market. I've not been trading great. A lot of the things I've been looking at have kind of gotten false starts or erratic action that can stop you out and then make you guess again and look for other things. There have been some nice winners in there as well for the more quicker, more tactical approach. But for kind of a longer term setup swing trade, I've been a little unfocused on that area. I've been distracted. I've not been terribly focused. And so that's why I have not been back with more updates and some specific actionable ideas for you guys, because I didn't want to force it. And if I'm not seeing things properly, if I'm going through a period of distress or drawdown or choppiness, there's no sense in pushing that out to anyone else as well. So I've been quiet, slowing down, kind of trying to recenter and get my bearings on what's going on. So that's what's going on. I don't like it, but that's what's happened. There's no change in that. But the truth of the matter is, every trader has periods like this. This happens from time to time. This is one of the frustrating parts of the job, is when there's not much to do or the things you're doing don't work well. And it's just the nature of the beast. It happens from time to time. And sometimes the market chops back and forth and doesn't really go anywhere. And it's best to just do nothing. So I appreciate your patience, understanding. We'll see what happens next. And I'm going to switch over to the charts now. And let's look at the action and really see what's going on here for the last week or so. So let's take a look here at the charts, and the biggest development was S&P held this support area here. Back at this time, the 21-day moving average was closer to this level, this 599 as well, and we got the move down on the CPI news the other day. The support held and has prompted us back up and out of this consolidation range and into recent pivot highs here. So that's a positive development. We're not running away, and I'm going to go to the 1 hour futures chart here in a second to look at that a little closer. But it's a nice resolution higher, but there's still plenty of time to get involved here. Same thing with the Qs. We got this support area. This was around 522. And that is held, and we're back up and above this consolidation range, this trend line here, and things are starting to look better. So there's the Qs. Let's go over now to the roadmap. Again, to recap, this is a 1 hour chart of the stock index futures. We've got the S&P 500 over here, and this is back on February the 5th and 6th. I'm going to scoot over a little bit. And you can see this was the chop area between the pink line is the year-to-date anchored VWAP, and the blue line is the 5-day moving average. Those were kind of the edges of the pinball machine, if you remember the analogy there. And it wasn't until really February the 6th that we got a resolution and things started breaking out and moving higher. Now, what happened next was a little concerning. After that resolution, we saw this top put in quickly because of the non-farm payroll number. That took things all the way back down to the year-to-date anchored VWAP, and then we kind of started over and started chopping around again. This was the CPI low on Wednesday morning, and so we've been climbing from that. We made it through PPI, and now here we are back over this pivot high. So yes, we're making some progress higher, but we haven't exactly run away from where we were just over a week ago, or just about a week ago. So here's the same thing on the Qs. They've been a little more choppy and erratic, and again, the same thing. We've got pivot highs, year-to-date anchored VWAP lows, and finally getting some upside resolution here. Again, just to switch back to the daily charts, we've come out of this kind of trend line. We're up here. We're past this pivot, and new highs are right within range here. Matter of fact, 539.15. We closed today at 538.50. So we're just under the new highs there. So this is finally starting to take some shape to the upside and tell us we can look at more long-oriented swing trade ideas into the coming weeks. There is a caveat. We'll touch on that again here in a few minutes. So before we switch back, here's the DIA. A little choppier, not quite the resolution to the upside that the others have seen, and IWM continues to be just, it's like a disaster area. It's just not going anywhere. It's a mess, even more so than the others. So back, here's those same indices on the 1 hour futures charts. We've got a declining 5-day moving average over here on these. This one on the Dow is just starting to come back up a little bit. So apologies if I'm jumping around there a little too quick, but leave that up for a second. And so now the upside resolution is good and welcome. However, the thing, and I've pointed this out in a couple of articles already and on my X feed, the second half of February is, historically speaking, that's where all the choppiness happens. So let me go over here. If you consider that since the first trading day of the month, stocks have been generally higher, it's worth keeping in mind that on average, the month of February finishes about flat. So there's a real seasonal tendency for prices to drift back down into this low 590s area. So this is something we want to be mindful of. We don't want to let that scare us away from taking trade ideas. It's not necessarily something we want to make decisions based on, but it is something we want to keep tucked in the back of our mind there and know that there could be a tendency for things to drift on lower. Here's the same thing in the Qs. This was the first trading day of the month and some decent progress here. So, how are things going to feel? That's what we want to consider from a risk management standpoint, is how are things going to feel if we get all bulled up and long here and only to go back into this area, back down around 513, 514, and so forth. So just, again, something to be mindful of. Back on the bullish side of things, I want to point out Bitcoin here. This was in the article yesterday talking about this now 10-day consolidation range. Look how incredibly tight Bitcoin has been for almost 2 weeks now. These 4 days in particular, the open and closing prices were almost identical, and it's just been incredibly tight. I don't know which way it breaks. This has been just very erratic and directionless for the better part of 3 or 4 months now. But we've got the 50-day and 21-day moving averages overhead. We've got this anchored VWAP as a boundary to the downside. And once we get out of this roughly $3,000 range, break outside of that should produce a sizable move. I don't know which way it goes, as I said, but it could go, first thing to watch for would be a move back up to the 108s on the upside, or if it breaks to the downside, we've got potential down here in the 90,000. And then here's another anchored VWAP in the mid 86s. And then if it really got nasty, the 200-day is down here just under 80,000. I wouldn't expect that, but we've seen crazier moves before, and Bitcoin has shown us a couple of times already as well that a erratic move could very easily be dissolved, and we get right back where we started in a hurry. So just because it breaks out and goes doesn't necessarily mean that it'll stay in that. That's just what I see on Bitcoin now. That's the facts of the matter. And the dollar is doing what we want it to do to enable stocks to go up, and that is breaking this trend line here and going down through this pivot area and moving lower as it progresses through this zone here and maybe comes down into this mid 105s or even below 105 into the 200-day moving average. So there's kind of a big picture overview. There's some real talk about what's been going on for the last week or so. I hope you find that helpful. I do appreciate you being here, and I do think next week will be a little different. We will see what comes up over the weekend, and don't forget markets closed on Monday for President's Day. I hope you all have a great Valentine's Day evening, and I will be back with more ASAP. Good night, all.